So it is 7:03. We are ready to start the live stream now. I will now call to order the regular City Council meeting of August 10th, 2020. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held electronically and members of council are participating remotely to the council's electronic participation policy. Public access to the meeting is available on local government access channel 8 for Comcast and Xfinity subscribers and on the city's YouTube channel online. Public access is also available by telephone by utilizing the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. All callers will be muted and may only comment during the times allotted for public comment as indicated on the agenda. If you're on the phone line waiting to speak to council and are also watching the meeting on YouTube or channel 8, please know that there are a couple of seconds of delay with the live stream. Please turn down your TV or TV volume or your computer volume as we approach the sections of the agenda reserved for public invited to be heard so that you can hear the council meeting on the phone line and to prevent background noise when you are unmuted to speak. Those calling in and wishing to speak to council may text 303-450-8757 to sign up to provide public comment. Please note that you must connect to the City Council meeting by calling the separate call-in number listed on the agenda. Please speak up and indicate your desire to provide public comment when prompted at the appropriate times. Once you have been recognized, state your name and address and provide your comments to council. Thank you for following these directions and for maintaining meeting decorum tonight. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford?
Here.
Councilmember Witkovich?
Here.
Councilmember Peterson?
Here.
Councilmember Downing?
Here.
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Goff?
Here.
Councilmember Duran Malika?
Here.
Councilmember Escobar?
Here.
All right, we will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to share my screen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation
under God,
indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Okay, moving on. Response to citizen inquiry. City Manager Geyer, do we have any?
Nothing this evening, Mayor Leidy. Thank you.
Agenda additions or deletions? Anything tonight? No? Okay. We are going to begin with presentations. We have our Good Neighbor Awards. So Jenny Murphy, our Community Outreach Coordinator, is with us tonight, and she will provide information about the Good Neighbor Awards.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm happy to be here tonight to talk about good neighbors that we have throughout Northglenn. Just to give you a little history on the Good Neighbor program, in 2019, I know you'll all remember that we recognized our neighbors through the 50th anniversary program through the Resident Recognition Program. And our goal was to select 50 residents for the 50th anniversary, and we far exceeded that number. And so due to this success of the Resident Recognition Program, you all came up with the great idea to have the Good Neighbor Award. program. And so through that, the honorees are hopefully invited to a reception 3 times a year. This year, we did have to cancel April due to COVID. This time, we are doing a virtual recognition, and then we hope to possibly be in person for the November recognition. We are Kylin and myself in the communications department. We delivered yard signs and a gift bag and a booklet, an award booklet for each of the nominees. We were able to gather pictures for some of the awardees, but not all of them. So you won't see all of their pictures tonight, but they were, I spoke to each one of them. They were just so humble and happy to receive this award from, their neighbors. So we'll go ahead and get started with the first round of Good Neighbor Award honorees. We have 17 of them tonight. And so, Mayor, if you'd like to go to the first slide. So our first Good Neighbor Award goes to Julie Adams, and she was nominated by Kenneth Scudder. And Kenneth says that Julie has been such a great neighbor. She's taken out their garbage for years. She always keeps an eye on their house and even shuts their garage door when she leaves it open late at night. Sometimes she always lends a helping hand when she sees me coming home with groceries and helps bring in my paper. She checks on me often to make sure I'm doing well and is just an all-around great neighbor. So Julie, Kenneth says that she's just so lucky to have such a good neighbor. Okay, next.
Awesome.
We have April and Ed Bale, and they were nominated by the Corsi family. Ed mows the lawn and April shovels snow. She returns the trash barrel after the trash is picked up. They're active members in their church. They've helped to dig and pull yard weeds, offered to grocery shop during this COVID time, and also helps all of the other neighbors around them.
That's great.
And then we have Abe and Pauline Brito, and they were nominated by Diana Kessler. Abe and Pauline have helped our family since we moved to Northglenn in 2014. Abe is always shoveling snow off of our driveway and sidewalks. He brings our trash cans up from the curb as soon as they're picked up. Pauline voluntarily took me to the store when needed and is always offering to do projects that we have around our yard. So another great neighbor.
That's awesome.
Larry Berg was nominated by the Wagner family. And they nominated Larry because whenever it snows, Larry is out very early. He'll shovel his walk plus the sidewalk all the way to his front door. Then he proceeds to the school all the way to the cul-de-sac. And as we all know, snow shoveling is very important to families that need that extra help. So Larry's another good neighbor.
Nice.
And then we have Sharon, Chacon, and Yvonne Lopez, nominated by their neighbor, Janice Baker. And these two super women help shovel snow, take trash containers out and in, offer to go to the store and take them places, call and check on her, brought food when she was laid up, helped with computer problems and technical problems, always sharing and don't expect anything in return. She says she's had many neighbors in her lifetime, but these ladies are by far the best.
That's awesome.
Carissa Chavez was nominated by Maddie Sue Green. Carissa also shovels driveway and sidewalk this past winter, which is greatly appreciated as they are both in need and they're senior citizens. So look at that little family helping out.
So cute.
Janice Hathaway and Emily Trawinski were nominated by Sandra Elliott. In March, she had dental surgery, and it was just really a hard situation. She was running out of food, and to her surprise, Emily reached out and went to the store for her and asked if she needed anything. Her thoughtfulness really brought her to tears, and she ended up shopping for her several times until she got better. Emily's mother, Janice, let me know that if I needed anything to call her at any time.
That's awesome.
Bud and Lauri Hines were nominated by Deanna Miller. And every winter, Bud and Lauri Hines shovel at least 4 or 5 of their neighbors' walks, sometimes even doing it twice a day when there's an ongoing storm. They respond quickly when asked for other kinds of needs, and they watch out for her as she's 79 to make sure she's doing okay. Tina Kivitek and Jody Roper were both nominated by Judith Giltner. Tina and Jody and their family, Brady and Emmy, are neighbors everyone wants and everyone needs. They shovel snow and cut up limbs broken from trees, trim hedges, take trash to the curb, and many, many other things, rejecting any compensation, although an occasional baked good is really welcome. Tina is a marvelous handy woman and has done so many things, it's hard to name them all, from changing high light bulbs to building steps on her patio. So really good neighbors.
So I have to jump in. My kids went to school with Emmy and Brady, and this family is wonderful. I completely agree. That's so exciting that they got that award.
That's awesome. And these friends give in many ways. I know them as flower bed partners, but Kathy and Stu Melvin were nominated by Margaret Hanson. Kathy is a nurse practitioner, and she is our neighborhood nurse, as well as the IHM Catholic Church here in Northglenn nurse. Kathy is a volunteer in several organizations, including Northglenn Garden Club and the Northglenn Flower Bed Partner Program, and she's always willing to lend and offer a helping hand. And her husband, Stu, is the very same way. He's always out there helping and moving trash cans and checking on neighbors, and they're just a lovely couple, good neighbors. And next we have Mark and Courtney Montgomery, and they were nominated by Valerie McNew. For the last few years, this couple has taken their time to make sure, again, that snow is cleared from the property so that she doesn't get in any trouble or no one gets hurt. They bring me baked goods and make sure every year that I receive a Christmas gift. Truly an inspiration to see the kindness this young couple and their children spread. So nice to see Mark and Courtney passing that on to their kids also.
That's awesome.
Next, we have Denise Sandusky, and she was nominated by Chuck Clark. During the winter, whether we are here or not, she arrives early and we hear that snowblower going. She clears her mother's driveway and sidewalk and then clears our driveway and sidewalk. Then she goes off to work. We are really appreciative of her efforts, especially when we're out of town. And then Genevieve Sandusky, again nominated by Sherry Clark. Genevieve Sandusky is truly a good neighbor. She keeps an eye out for any unusual activity around our home when we're not there. She collects our mail often as we are out of state for extended periods and has even mailed items to us when we are gone. So we all could use that extra help, I'm sure. And next we have just the friendliest gentleman, Bernard Small, and he was nominated by Marlene Gardells. Bernard had a much longer explanation of everything that he does, but overall, he shovels snow for all of his neighbors, including their driveways, super friendly, waving and speaking to everyone, just like it should be in a small town. Next, we have Jeff and Shelley Smith, nominated by Megan Trammell. They constantly go above and beyond to help out our community, shoveling snow, pulling up trash cans from the curb, looking after mail when people are on vacations, looking after pets when people are on vacations, trimming trees, sharing fruits and vegetables from their garden, doing drywall home improvements. They give out the best candy at Halloween, and the list goes on and on. We hugely benefit from the kindness of these good neighbors. Lindsay and Justin Spainer, nominated by Tara Harvey. When it snows, you will catch Justin out on his snowblower, clearing off the sidewalks. He is never asked to do this, he just does it. Lindsay will always text us if we forgot to close our garage door at night, seems to be a common thing. And Lindsay always grabs our mail packages for us when we're out of town. Macy waters our flowers when we're out of town, and their family also hosted a neighborhood barbecue. So just really doing a good job helping their neighborhood.
That's awesome.
Robert Zamora. Robert was nominated by Marlene Gardels, and Robert mows her lawn. He's also watered, fertilized, and helped her in so many ways. He is such a good neighbor and looks after me. And I believe that's the end of that's it. I'm sorry. Yes, that's the end of our 17 nominees for Good Neighbor Award. I'm so glad we're carrying this on past the 50th anniversary, and look forward to our recognition in November. Hopefully, maybe we'll be all together then.
Jenny, can I ask, and I don't know if this is a question for you or maybe even Diana, is there a way to celebrate these individuals more publicly and have it be on our social media or on our website somewhere?
Yes, it is our intent to do all of that. And then, when we are able to be back in person, we intend to have a reception for these individuals, and take a group picture. So yes, we want to recognize them and let all of Northglenn know that there's good neighbors everywhere.
Right. Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's really fun. I love that.
I do too. It's a great program. Thank you all for this program.
So many great stories. I love it.
Yes. We'll have a good meeting.
Thank you. Okay. So we are moving into the Dedicated Service Awards. Shelby Rosner and Jacob Tao, our Youth Commission members. Are they with us tonight? Oh, there's Jacob. There we go. There's Shelby. Okay, excellent. Is there a presentation that goes with this or just my script? I'll just look.
Good evening, Mayor.
Okay.
We don't have a presentation, just the script. We have Jacob and Shelby who have graduated this year, so they're wrapping up their terms on the Youth Commission.
That's fantastic. So I know you have both contributed so much and we really appreciate it. So I'm going to start with Shelby. So thank you for being here. And I just have a few words about you to say congratulations. So Shelby joined the Northglenn Youth Commission last fall as a senior at Horizon High School. Throughout high school, Shelby was heavily involved in her school's theater program, building sets and serving as a stage manager. She also earned the AP Scholar with Distinction Award and helped form her school's first chapter of the Science National Honor Society. Shelby's favorite Youth Commission project was working with the Adams County Youth Initiative's Tobacco Research Project. She said it was so cool to not only gain some perspective into why young people vape and how it affects them and their families, but to feel like we were helping to influence legislation. This fall, Shelby will be attending CU Boulder. She is double majoring in psychology and neuroscience. Shelby has been an active member of the Youth Commission, and she will be missed. Congratulations, Shelby. Do you want to say a few words, or does anyone want to add on?
Thank you so much for the experience. It's been so much fun to get to know everybody and to be able to get involved in the community a little bit more. I'm just sorry that I didn't join sooner, honestly.
Well, we were very happy to have you, and congratulations. Councilmember Brown?
I just wanted to wish them congratulations, and we're going to miss you. I wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors. And thank you so much for volunteering for Northglenn and the Teen Academy. I really screwed that up, didn't I? The Youth Commission. Wrong group. But thank you so much, kids. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Malika?
I just wanted to say congratulations on all your success and good luck at CU Boulder. I'm a alumni of CU Boulder, so go Buffs.
Awesome. All right. So we also have Jacob with us. So Jacob has been an active member of the Northglenn Youth Commission since March of 2018, most recently serving as the board's president. He is a recent graduate of Stargate. Jacob's favorite Youth Commission activity was the Little Libraries Project. One of Jacob's favorite memories was the dedication ceremony for the Little Library. He said, "It was great that we got to meet the students and see all of our work really pay off." Jacob will be attending Colorado College this fall and is going to major in math and political science. We have appreciated Jacob's leadership amongst his fellow youth commissioners and know he will take those leadership skills with him as he heads to college. Congratulations, Jacob. Do you want to add anything? Councilmember Peterson.
Well, would Jacob like to speak first?
Sure.
Yeah, I would just echo what Shelby said. Thank you all. It's been a really incredible opportunity to get to work with City Council and help make a difference in the community. And I hope that even though I'll be moving out of Northglenn for college, that whenever I come back, I'll still be able to help continue giving back to the community.
Yes, definitely. Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say congratulations, Shelby and Jacob, to both of you. Thank you for your service. You know, these are difficult times in the country and in the world. And when you look at so many things going on in the news, you know, a lot of times, you know, a lot of adults kind of put their head in the sand and there's not a lot to be hopeful for. It seems, right? On the surface, it seems that. And then when you see public service and you see it done by young people, you know, I'm sure everybody would echo this, but it gives us, you know, us old folks a lot of hope and a lot of inspiration. And so that's an ongoing commitment. Don't, as you know, be engaged in the world, don't let it get you down. Remember who you are and remember what you've done. And that's something to be eminently proud of. And so you'll have a semester of college under your belt when you come back and see us at Noel Northglenn in December.
Thank you both. Good luck. Thanks for being here with us tonight. Okay. So our third presentation is from Superintendent Chris Skidowski on our Adams 12 5-star schools update on the COVID-19 and the upcoming school year. So I will pull that up. And it looks like we have a school board member to join us. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes,
Mayor.
Jamie Lockley.
Got it. Well, Jamie, welcome. Are you doing the presentation tonight?
Thankfully, no. I'm going to go ahead and let Chris Kadowski, the superintendent, and I believe Pat Hamilton is here as well. And they and their teams have really been working very hard this summer to put this presentation and this plan together. So I am going to let them take the wheel on this one.
Okay. Are you just joining us as a guest or?
Just to support the work and answer any questions if there are any kind of board level questions that might arise during the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you. So I don't have a visual for our other two presenters. Are they just on the phone, Joanna?
I believe Chris, Mayor, this is Heather, is on, but I see that his camera's off. So,
okay.
And I'm not sure if Pat, I see Pat as well, but his camera's off. So,
okay.
Let me see if I can't nudge them. Hang on just a moment.
Chris just came on. Hello.
Heather, I'm good to go. I had my computer ran out of juice, so I'm plugged in and ready to rock and roll. And thanks for bearing with me.
No worries. Welcome. So I have your presentation pulled up. Just let me know as we move along if you'd like me to advance.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. Nice to join you tonight. It was fun to see Jacob and Shelby recognized as we got started. About 40 years ago, I was a member of the Northglenn Youth Commission back when Mayor Barry was the mayor of Northglenn, and the first time visiting his home that I had ever been exposed to guacamole, so I have that memory. But more than that, it was just a tremendous experience to be around a leader like Mayor Barry and with other students who wanted to be involved in community service, growing up in a household. That wasn't something that my parents, neighbors, or relatives had done. And so I'm glad to see the Youth Commission sustains and that we're going to set up folks like Jacob and Shelby to go on and be tremendous community servants down the road. So just wanted to share that out. Mayor, there's a long presentation here today, and I may not get much further than slide 2. It tends to be the way this goes down. Because what I often hear is people have interest in knowing what are you going to do and what's the why behind it. And slide 2 often gets me to a space about talking about those two pieces. So if we can move on to that second slide.
All right.
What we've said is that our plan really is based upon 3 core principles. One is to maintain safety of our students and staff in our schools. And so we've looked at a lot of data in that space, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. A second compelling interest is to have efficiency, continuity, productivity, and if you're constantly transitioning from one mode of doing school to another, or if you have frequent quarantines, that can get sacrificed pretty readily. So we're mindful about consistency, predictability, and efficiency in how we serve families and students. And then the third piece is to be mindful about the needs of our students and families. We know that notwithstanding the virus and the challenges it poses for gathering in large groups, that our young people have a strong need and interest to come together in person, and our families, beyond their appreciation for the work we do in educating our students, have an interest in us having their students be closely supervised in a place where they can access internet and be in a safe learning environment so that parents can go on to work. And in the end, we feel like this plan that we've developed balances all 3 of those interests. The plan at its core calls for us to largely start in a remote setting this year. So to continue with online at-home instruction for most of our students. There are a couple of data points that were significant in driving that recommendation. One is that at the time this recommendation was developed, roughly 2 weeks ago, the 2-week average in terms of cases within Colorado and within Adams County was at a really high level of more than 520 cases in that rolling 2-week average. And so it was at about 3 times the level that we saw back in early June, late May, when we started some of our summer care programming in the district. And so we saw large numbers in that data and predictions from the state epidemiologists and others who've done modeling that the case curve was going to continue to grow, and that there was a good chance that that curve continued as predicted, that come September and October, we'd have peaks that might tax hospital capacity within our community and within the region. So case numbers was an important consideration driving this. A second piece that was important for us was looking at our experience over the summer and operating our childcare program. You're probably familiar with our BASE program, where we typically provide before and after school services for students throughout the school year. And then in the summer, it transitions into an all-day summer camp experience where typically we take students on field trips, go to the movies, go to the park, go to the swimming pool. There's a lot of excursions that are typically part of the experience. This summer, we weren't able to do that because of a lot of things being shut down and a lot of the physical distancing, small group restrictions in place. So we saw our numbers decrease from about 1,100 that we typically serve in summer to about 470 students in our summer program. During the course of that programming, we've now had 3 positive cases of COVID with staff members. The good news is that none of those individuals has had significant illness that's required any intensive medical treatment. They've not transmitted the virus in any of our summer-based programs to other staff members or to students. But one of the big challenges that we've grappled with in that setting is when you have a positive case, the public health guidance is that you need to quarantine all of the students and staff members who've been in close proximity to the affected individual within the prior 48 hours. And so in this setting of BASE, that means that you're putting students on a 14-day quarantine, and their teacher and any other co-teachers that have been within that classroom for some extended period of time in the 48 hours prior. Quarantining is really a time-consuming process. As we did it for the first 2 positive cases we had in BASE, we spent close to 30 hours over the Father's Day weekend contacting all of the parents and all of the staff members, responding to questions, coordinating with public health officials. And so it's time-consuming even when your groups are as small as the 12 to 14 student cohorts that we had in our summer BASE program. When we started to think about various approaches to schooling for the fall, what we see on the other end of the continuum in terms of cohort size is at the high school level, even if we transition to a system of just having 2 block classes per day, so a little bit like the Cardo College model that Jacob's going to be a part of as he transitions there, we were looking at a model where students might come for 1 2.5 hour long course in the morning and 1 2.5 hour course in the afternoon. So we minimize how many distinct students are interacting with each other over 48 hours. Even in that sort of setting, the worst case, if you have a positive case emerge, is that you're having to quarantine 140 students who've all interacted with each other over the course of a 48-hour period in those 4 distinct courses. And so that's disruption factor that we've dealt with firsthand in our summer BASE program. When you scale it up even bigger, at a high school setting, a middle school setting, even an elementary setting, gave us great pause about doing fully in-person or even hybrid schooling systems this year. So this discontinuity, disruption caused by large infection rates within the community was a weighty factor in the recommendation and plan adopted by the board. Another significant factor is that we know that hybrid systems where students come one day and they're home the next, and you're like in school Monday, you're out Tuesday, you're back in on Wednesday, out on Thursday, but that's really difficult for families' work schedules to have a system like that in place. It's difficult to have your boss say, Chris, it's fine for you to come Monday, Wednesday this week, and next week, Tuesday, Thursday. We've heard from a variety of families, that's just a hardship that's difficult to manage. And so we were mindful about that in evaluating hybrid options as well. And given those challenges with both the hybrid and the full in-person learning, given rates of transmission and quarantine rules, where we landed was on this remote setting where students will do online learning largely at home, but especially at the elementary and middle school level, have a lot of opportunities to come in much smaller groups of up to 10 students at the earliest grades of K1, 2, up to groups of 12 at grades 3, 4, and 5, and groups of up to 15 for students in grades 6 through 8. And they'll be able to come to these learning pods that we're going to open up at our elementary and middle schools and K-8s. It will be a no-cost option for parents because we know many families are not in a position to afford additional expense for student supervision in these circumstances and given the economic pressures they face. So we'll do this at no cost. We'll have much lower class sizes that are consistent throughout the week as opposed to the every other day approach in a hybrid. And the staffing behind this is our support staff who often have roles day in and day out of working with students in their traditional role. So a lot of the hard work of making learning pods work well so students can access the internet, so they can be in a supervised setting that their parents don't have to worry about, and so they can get support if they're getting stuck on some of the content they're working through. The people behind that will be our support staff who currently serve as paraprofessionals. So they might be a teacher's aide in a special needs classroom or in a regular classroom to support a classroom teacher at present. They'll also be our before and after school base staff who are well accustomed to working with kids and helping them with homework and helping them have a productive experience before and after school. We'll also look to substitute teachers throughout our system that we won't need very many of in a remote learning context. And so we hope to have many of them support learning pods throughout our system. And we'll have other support staff beyond those groups I've just identified helping us with that effort too. In the end, we believe we can serve 7,000 plus students in learning pod situations. So we might not be able to support all of the families who desire this service in our district. We have a survey that's pending and we'll look to see what the final demand is for that service. But our best hope is that we find this just right balance of not exposing our staff and students to undue risk, that we keep class sizes small, distance between students large. We reduce the size of cohorts that have to be placed on quarantine when we have positive cases. When we do have a positive case in things like learning pods, that the disruption to learning is minimized because the regular classroom teacher is still working with the student each and every day, delivering a remote instruction supported by Florida Virtual Academy curriculum. And then we'll have our teachers supplement that Florida Virtual curriculum with their own instruction and their own ideas based upon their experience about how to bring learning to life for students. And so that combination of things, we really feel like achieves all those core principles. It helps families get to work, has students coming together for in-person interactions frequently. And there's also periodic in-person interactions planned for middle and high school too, where we want students to come together not only for back to school night as they transition into 6th grade and 9th grade, but for some advisory gatherings every couple of weeks thereafter. And we also want to provide in-person support and instruction to some students that just can't benefit with remote learning alone. So preschool students in this model will have some in-person instruction and support twice a week for a couple hours a day. And then we'll have in-person support and instruction for our second language learners and for our special needs students with more intense needs that can't be served through a remote setting. And so this mix of in-person, a place where parents can send their children to be supported by really qualified and caring staff so parents can get to work, minimizing circumstances that increase the risk of spreading the virus. We feel like this approach that we've landed on really achieves a good balance between all those competing priorities. So that's at its core what all these 19 slides I think would tell you if we went slide by slide. Hopefully this is a good explanation of the why and the how of how we plan to proceed. The final thing I would share and would love whatever questions you all would like to pose. We plan to revisit what we should do after September 25th on or before September 11th. That will give us a chance to see what is the virus doing within our community in the weeks more close to a decision-making point. We'll be able to see how many of our tests in a free voluntary testing program that we're going to launch next week, how many of them have tested positive? How likely is it that we would have significant numbers of staff members who are falling ill and requiring quarantine And so September 11th is our date to look at a variety of data points and decide if we should continue with remote learning after September 25th, or if moving to some sort of hybrid or in-person model is the best path forward, given all that we'll know at that time. So I see you all going through the long list of slides. If there's things in the slide deck that you'd like to visit about in greater depth, I'm happy to do that. But I also want to be mindful of your time tonight.
And that's okay. I just wasn't sure. I guess I was assuming we were going to go through the presentation. So I didn't know if we should still flip through them and maybe say one thing about each so that we can at least, for people that are watching, then they can go through and see. I know they have the availability to find these on our website since you shared them with us. But I don't know, I sort of feel like we should go through them a little bit, if that's okay.
Yep, you bet. On this slide that you have in front of us, which is a timeline, I'll highlight a few pieces beyond what I've shared. One is that the survey is outstanding and it's assessing families' needs to have a student participate in these learning pods that I've described, largely for elementary and middle school age students. The second place of inquiry is, do you need a computing device? Back in the spring, we deployed nearly 12,000 computing devices, largely Chromebooks, to families who needed that to support remote learning. We let students keep them over the summer with hopes that they would engage in some informal self-directed learning in the dog days of summer, and hopefully they've done that. And we're hopeful that most of those devices remain in good shape and can be used to continue remote learning in the future. But we also know there's a number of families that hoped they could manage with computing devices they had in their home in the spring, and it was really challenging for everyone to get their respective things done. And so we're asking questions about who needs a device so that we can deploy those devices in the weeks ahead at school sites. And then the third piece is, what are your transportation needs? If we have learning pods in your school, are you able to get your child to it without a bus or district transportation? And so the survey closes at the close of business or later tonight. We've had tremendous response thus far, and that will help us figure out more about what equipment needs and services beyond what we've laid out so far are necessary for our families. Yeah, that's just a key one on that slide. This slide here talks a lot about what I've mentioned before, that preschool students, elementary 6th and 9th grade students, those are all groups of students within our system that typically come to back to school night in large numbers, have interest in connecting with their teachers and their classmates and getting to know one another. And we believe there's tremendous value in doing that in person. And so if we can have them do that work in small groups, largely outdoors when we can, we minimize risk factors and we start to build community that, whether we stay online or we come back in person, will get us off to a really positive start. And then at the secondary level, we feel like our middle and high school students need to have in-person touches with each other and their teachers as well. And largely just to check in to see, how are you doing in this setting? Not really so much to say, I'm here to work through what you're struggling through in math, but to be more of a support about technology challenges, social emotional issues that the students working through. If there's a teacher they're just not clicking with, how to advocate with that teacher to get the help and support that you need. So we look forward to getting that up and running in the weeks ahead as well.
Oh, you talked about that. Okay.
Yeah, this piece here, as I mentioned before, preschoolers, English language learners, students with special needs, students with advanced learning plans. In many cases, students in those subgroups just cannot have their needs met to make the kind of progress that we'd like them to make without some in-person support. And so we're going to be looking at IEPs, for example, and looking at the significance of a child's need. How did they do in the spring? Because we had some students who struggled in that setting. And for students who are having the greatest difficulties making progress in remote learning, we'd like to meet with them 2 to 3 times a week in person. We feel like that's really going to help them move forward. And at the same time, minimizes risk because those groups will be really, really small. Yeah, this slide here talks a little bit about both the why behind delaying our start of school by 1 week, and then some of the work we need to do to enhance consistency and online instruction throughout our system. So the 1 week, in this case, as you'll recall back in the spring, we went on an extended spring break. A lot of our staff members had commitments at that time, and so they weren't able to spend significant time in many cases thinking about how to change to remote learning until we came back from spring break and they had 2 days to gear up and get ready. Not nearly enough time to figure out how to transition longstanding instructional practice into a completely different environment. This time we feel like, because of this extension of starting school from August 20th to August 27th, that will give teachers 2 full weeks, not only to focus on instructional know-how, but all the other beginning of the year things like child abuse reporting and how to deal with sexual harassment and the rest. But we'll have more time for our educators to get prepared and to understand the tools that you see referenced in here. Schoology is the learning management system that we hope to use, that we will be using system-wide. As we gathered feedback from parents and staff in the spring and students, there was frustration about having so many different things to have to figure out with passwords and the technology approach to get into learning across the various classes that you take. So Schoology will be a consistent way for people to be able to access online content, and then Florida Virtual Schools curriculum will provide that foundation on which teachers will build further. But the Florida Virtual Curriculum will get 2/3 of our teachers in a spot that they've got this really solid foundation in which they can then expand on in teaching. The places where Florida Virtual doesn't really penetrate are largely in electives, so art, music, and PE, some of our honors courses, some advanced placement courses, some world language courses, especially at the most advanced levels. And in those cases, our instructors will be doing more work with more time to transition their typical instruction into a digital format, much like they did in the spring. What else to say here?
Chris?
Yes.
One thing that you haven't mentioned yet, just adding into a group who will be getting in-person instruction as well as students in some of our CTE courses, because some of that can't be accomplished virtually.
Jamie, thanks for adding that. Our Washington Square Future Forward campus is in the very final stages of getting finished up and ready for business. And we really are optimistic that we're going to be able to bring in some students in small cohorts for some of the services at Bowman and Future Forward that you just can't develop in an online setting. So we'll have more details to share about that in the weeks ahead. 2 other things I would mention about remote learning, that'll be different than the spring. So I've talked about Schoology and Florida Virtual. Those things are different. They will make things better. The other part that will be different is we're going to have more synchronous live in-person instruction that goes on. So the spring format was largely asynchronous, which means you can do it on your own time whenever it works for you individually as a student or as a family, and sometimes as a staff member, that you could record your lessons to students on certain days, and then students would have a lot of flexibility over the course of a week about when they engaged and when they got things done. A lot of the feedback we got, again, from all those constituencies is that we'd like to have more structure and we'd like to have more in-person engagement between teacher and students and between groups of students. And so there will be a lot more synchronous instruction where the teachers working directly with students live and in person. It doesn't mean that our students are going to be glued to their computers and listening to their teacher and on screen for 6 hours plus a day, but we will have touches, sometimes lengthy touches and sometimes more brief touches depending on how instruction in that content area is going during the course of the week. We'll have those in-person touches between teacher and student on multiple times every day. And then we're going to have a schedule that, especially at the elementary level, helps guide that each day we need to have a time set aside for literacy instruction, for math instruction, for other components of the curriculum. It's going to be really helpful, we believe, for parents to know what their children should be doing, to have a sense about how they can help and provide support. And it just allows consistency between all of our schools about what we're asking our students to do. So we feel like all of those things are going to make the experience much more rich than what we were able to do in the spring.
I think you covered that earlier.
I think so. Yeah, the one thing I didn't cover on the slide that just scrolled away is we're also going to still provide base, but we're going to take the B out of it. So we're going to be having ACE, I think would be the acronym. Since those base staff members will be doing a lot of the learning pod supervision and support, we can't have them start at 6 in the morning and work till 6 p.m. at night. And so we know that our data tells us that roughly a quarter of our families have need for before school care. 75% of them need the care after school. And so we're gonna eliminate our before school programming just because we don't have enough staff to pull it off, and focus on learning pod supervision and after school care. And the after school piece will come at a fee, but the learning pod daily supervision will not be a fee-based service. I mentioned this one briefly before. So Gary Community Investments, once upon a time, not too long ago, was named Peton. They have a long-standing history of doing philanthropy and investing in educational endeavors. And they've been active in working with a variety of school districts throughout the Front Range. You may have seen their initial district with whom they contracted with was Aurora Public Schools to start doing free testing of staff members. Free to the staff member. They don't have to pay the cost of the test. On the district side, we'll be paying $10 per test. And we'll offer this up to all of our staff who are regularly working in the schools. We want to get that started, as I said, next week, so that we have hopefully a couple test cycles before we're to September 11th and making decisions about the future to see what percentage and what number of staff members in our system might be likely to be positive for COVID if we looked at some greater in-person interactions in the future. And what does that mean about quarantine, consistency, safety, all of those factors? And so we feel like this will be a tremendous service for our staff, and we look forward to getting that up and running next week. And this slide here talks about return to in-person criteria. It's often a question that we get posed either at the board meeting a week or so ago when this recommendation was acted upon, and in communications sense, people want some hard and fast criteria and data metrics by which we'll make decisions. And what's identified in here are the ones that I've mentioned a number of times before. We've got to look at numbers and rates of COVID transmission within Colorado, Adams, and Broomfield counties, projections around that, positive testing results for our staff, and quarantine rules. One of the things that changed after we released our plan was that the Thursday after that, so I believe it was July 30th, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment issued quarantine and outbreak guidance, and it went further than what we were expecting. What they said is if you have somebody with a cough, or if you have somebody with a sore throat and a headache, or various other combinations of symptoms that could reflect that somebody's positive for COVID, if you have a circumstance like that, that you need to move forward with a 14-day quarantine of the entire cohort in that circumstance too. So significantly broadens the number of times and the scope of students and staff likely to be touched by quarantine, when it's not just the people testing positive that prompt a quarantine, but situations in which somebody may have a cough that's unexplained, and then potentially at the high school level, if you're in person, you're quarantining 140 people. I've been in conversations since with the governor's office, with public health officials. I believe there's going to be some revision of that guidance so that we're not having to go down that path as often, and it's only the higher risk symptoms that prompt quarantine decisions. But that will be another variable as we get into September that we'll need to see What are the rules in that space? And then the final thing that's developing since the time of the recommendation in the slide deck, it's now likely that the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, various local public health authorities, including Tri-County Health and Broomfield Health, which have jurisdiction over us, and some superintendents are currently working to develop a framework about what criteria, specific criteria, should we look at to make decisions about in-person versus remote. And so the factors that are likely to be under discussion there, one is the case rate. How is it trending over the last 14 days? How's it trending over the last 30 days? Where do we think it's going? But also looking at test positivity. Is it 5%? Is that a threshold to say maybe we need to be remote? Is it 10%? We'll see what that group recommends in that space. Rates per 100,000 of population is another metric that I believe is under discussion there, as well as rates of hospitalization within the community and the supply of PPE in a school setting. How much do you have? How long do you think it will last if you continue to be in person? So we're likely to have some regional guidance about health metrics from public health. That'll be part of the discussion in September as well.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop share. I know we have quite a few hands up from council, which I'm sure you're not surprised. I will apologize, council members. I have no idea in which order you raised your hand, so I'm just gonna go left to right. So Council Member Brown, and then Mullica, and then Peterson.
Hi, thank you for such a great presentation, Chris.
Thank you very much.
I just have a couple questions. Just a couple now. You made a comment of what is considered any length, any length of time. It was very vague. If an infected person, like in your base program, had been with any certain people for any length of time, but you didn't say what that length of time was. Can you help me with that?
You bet. And it's actually a challenging issue that today superintendents from the Denver region were on a call with the governor's office talking about this same issue, as well as CDPHE, because there are two, at times, conflicting standards that we have shared out with us. On the one hand, we've had situations like when we had a positive case at the central office in early June, where we weren't required to quarantine other staff present at the ESC, because in that case, public health said, we don't have an exposure. We don't have evidence that the person who was positive was within 6 feet of another person for a period of 15 minutes or longer. And so that's the way they've defined exposure, is 15 minutes or longer within 6 feet of another person. When you have that, in a lot of settings, like an office setting, then you have to quarantine whichever individuals have been that close for that long. Okay. In the school setting, that's not the standard they're using. So they're not measuring if all of us are in class together, city council and me and 15 or 20 of us all together. They're not looking to see if Chris tests positive, who's sitting close to him on his right and his left and front and behind, and only having the people who are within 6 feet for 15 minutes or longer go on quarantine. Instead, the standard they've set is anybody in that classroom and anybody in any of the classes with whom that positive person has been for the past 48 hours needs to go on quarantine. So that's why the quarantine risk is significant at high school. If you have one student in English class who tests positive, we're likely having to put on quarantine not just the English class, and not just the kids sitting close to me, but everyone in that English class and everyone who was in social studies, science, and mathematics with that same student over the prior 48 hours. So you're right. It is a little bit vague about how long you have to spend time. And at this juncture, what they're telling us is we're not going to count how long if that student, unless somebody was absent that day, or from the last couple of days with the student, maybe we'll look at some limited exceptions, but otherwise everyone in the class, regardless of where they're at in proximity to the infected person, has to be out for 2 weeks.
And what is the newest quarantine standard? Is that 2 weeks or for them 2 weeks or just 1 week?
The quarantine standard for who, Becky? I'm sorry.
For the students or the staff?
It's 14 days for both.
I'm sorry I'm hogging your time. I'm promising.
Oh, you're not hogging at all. They're great questions. The quarantine thing, I think for a lot of people, it's not what they expect. Part of what I mentioned at the board meeting last week was that what I see on TV is if you have a positive case on a professional baseball team, that player stays at the hotel, he's not playing. If you have a number of people on the same team who get sick, maybe they're not playing for a few games. That's much different than here, because if we have one person on our team, like on a football team, contract the virus, the entire team, an entire football team, for example, is then on quarantine for 14 days. So it's a lot more restrictive, it's broader in scope, longer in duration, and that definitely is a big factor in trying to figure out whether in-person learning is really going to work or not.
Last question, I promise, Chris. It has to do with your I'm going to round two topics together. Florida virtual schools, is that what that is? And the Schoolology program. Is that being used only in Adams County 12, or is that being used in other school districts also?
So this Florida virtual curriculum and Schoology is the means to access that is going to be used in a variety of places just here in the Denver region. And it's going to be a resource used, frankly, lots of places throughout the country. I believe off the top of my head that some of the local examples around using Florida Virtual Academy include places like Cherry Creek and the St. Vrain School District. But there's at least a handful altogether that are planning to use the same combo of Schoology and Florida Virtual Academy core content.
I'm sorry, Meredith, I lied. Chris, random question. How many middle schoolers do we have in Adams County 12? Just approximate.
About 8,000.
I won't ask you my next question. I'm going to be nice and let my other council members speak, but I want you to read my mind.
I will do my best to do that.
Thank you very much, Chris, for your time. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you much.
Councilmember Mullica.
Well, thank you, Becky, for handing off the floor. I appreciate it. So I have just a couple questions. First off, I want to thank Adams 12 staff for everything that they've been able to do and manage, especially last semester and even over the summer. I mean, studio staff have been absolutely fantastic, even filming the school play to kind of piece it together for those students. And so I really appreciate everything. They've gone above and beyond anything I could have imagined. So I really appreciate everyone's support and supporting our families the way that you guys have. A couple questions that I have for you is, I was curious about your pod size. I did fill out my parent survey today. Thank you for the extra nudge with the text. It really helped remind me that I had to fill it out today. But why 10 to 15 students? And I'm curious because, you know, I would have considered the pods as an option if it was a smaller group of students. And so I wanted to just throw that out to you.
Yeah, a lot of factors in terms of the pod size. One is that we want to maximize a resource without diminishing the safety impacts. So there have been a lot of parents corresponding, verbally communicating, otherwise letting us know their preferences. And you've probably heard that in a variety of circles too. Most parents, not only in Adamsville, but throughout the region, want in-person schooling. And the desired outcome most places is to have it 5 days a week in person. That obviously comes with some safety implications in terms of trying to pull that off with larger class sizes, not being able to maintain 6 feet in physical distancing, and having a lot more quarantines. But we're mindful about that parent demand. And so we've tried to find ways that we're maximizing cohort sizes without getting them to a place where we're compromising the 6 foot distancing between students that we think is important, without compromising the small cohorts that will, in event of positive cases, minimize how many students are out on 14-day quarantines along with their teacher. We have some differential according to age, because we feel like the younger students in our experience require greater supervision. And so just like we have smaller class sizes for kindergarten and first grade in a traditional setting, and bigger class sizes at 5th grade and even bigger class sizes at middle school, hence the same reasoning about the 10 student limit K1-2, the 12 students at 3, 4, 5, and then the 15 students up to middle school. So it's really a combination of those things. How many can we do, keep it safe, and provide the appropriate supervision at the same time?
Okay, well, thank you so much. I think that's how a lot of parents had to kind of think about, is the pod really necessary? I'm lucky enough to where I get to work from home, so I get to manage the curriculum on top of my job. So that's just how we chose to do it. And then we're hoping for a safe return later on this year. My final question for you is, and actually this could always also go to our director, Jamie. What can the city of Northglenn do to support you? I know that you mentioned that you may not even have enough space for pods, and you might, have kids who can't join a pod, even if they need to or want to, or, what other resources? I know that we partnered with you guys with masks. How else can the city of Northglenn support our Northglenn schools?
So I'll just give you a few ideas, and then if Director Lockley or Pat Hamilton, my colleague, want to jump in, I'd invite you to do that. So the learning pods are actually going to require us to get some new supplies to make that work for kids. In BASE programs, for those of you who've had a child in BASE, we often give students a little laundry basket that they can keep their possessions in. So they leave their class, they put everything in their laundry basket, they get stuff in and out. We need to have laundry baskets for students to be able to put their supplies, materials, and belongings in the learning pod space. And since we're trying to do all the learning pod work without cost to families, there's a fairly meaningful expense. Pat may know that expense off the top of his head to get these little laundry baskets for students to organize their things. We also want all the students to have headphones so that you don't have like 10 computers in a classroom all blaring things out. No one will be able to concentrate. And so having headphones that all of our students can use would be another tremendous benefit. Beyond that, internet connectivity we know is a challenge for a lot of our families throughout all parts of our community. Have been in discussions with some state officials that make me hopeful that we'll get some additional hotspots deployed, which seems like a much more enticing way for our families to get connectivity than going through Comcast. We put a lot of energy into connecting people to Comcast in the spring, and it felt like a lot of our families, either because of technological frustrations, like they may not know technology very well. Sometimes I think Comcast asks for information that people might be unwilling to give for a variety of reasons. We just didn't get as many people signed up with Comcast as we had hoped. So we may have the ability to get more hotspots that may even be free for some limited amount of time, but to sustain it for an extended period of time, having financial support to do that would also be tremendously helpful. And then on the space thing, Julie, we'll see how the staff willingness to serve in learning pods fits against the demand from parents. And if we have some unmet space needs, we'd love to be able to talk to your staff about ways that we might be able to utilize some public buildings in the community to meet that need. Right now, we're hopeful that we might be able to use middle schools or high schools to give us a little bit more capacity if we have enough staff and enough student interest, but really appreciate that offer.
Thank you. Councilmember Peterson?
Before we move on, if I could possibly just add one thing that Chris mentioned. Obviously, we have a shared constituency, and the council has always been really good partners in information sharing and supporting the district in that way and helping us get our messaging out. So we really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and share our plan. We appreciate that the plan will be available on your website. So we would just ask, any support you can provide. We know that folks come to you and talk to you about a lot of things in the same way that they come to talk to us about a lot of things. If families are sharing things or concerns that they have, absolutely share those with us and connect with us. We know that this plan is a work in progress and we have some things to work out, and we'll continue to examine and tweak things as we go through. And so we definitely want families reaching out and letting us know questions, concerns that they have, specific issues with their individual students and their learning experience, so that we can provide the best education we can given these less than optimal dynamics.
Thank you. Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thanks for being here tonight, Chris. Appreciate it. One of my questions was asked and answered, so that's good. But are you continuing, and what kind of strains are put upon you? But are you continuing with grab and go meals then for the foreseeable future for students and families?
We are. So at the Learning Pods, we'll have meals served to students who participate there. And then at our high schools and other distribution sites, we're going to transition to a once a week model where families can grab meals that will last them for the entire week. That'll largely be in a frozen capacity, and they can take home and cook them and prepare them. So we're absolutely going to do that. And we hope to minimize the burden of having to come to the site every day for the families who have consistent needs. That's just one less thing they have to worry about.
Okay, great. Thanks for everything you've done during this period. Northglenn is lucky to have you, Counselor.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Councilmember Goff.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Chris. As a retired teacher from District 12, my question is about teachers. Well, and so I'm hoping that you can say something about your plans and the outlook for not now, I guess it would be pod leaders, but then when you start some in-person learning, it would be substitute teachers and teachers who are sick beyond the 14 days. What are you thinking or knowing, or what do what are your plans for replacing staff who can't come back or can't come back within the 14 days, that kind of thing?
Yeah, great question. We know out of the gate that roughly a quarter of our current substitute teachers are age 60 plus, many of them 65 plus, and we're predicting that many of them will have little interest in coming to work in in-person settings given the risks that the virus poses. So out of the gate, our cohort size of substitute teachers is much smaller than what we normally have, and it's not been enough in the past. One of the big struggles that we deal with every year is having educators who are very frustrated that we can't get substitute teachers to cover their class, and often people are having to pick up additional classes on top of their teaching load just so we don't have students unsupervised. So it will be a challenge. We hope to have some of our substitutes in reserve so that if we do have a positive case in a learning pod in the most immediate section, that we can transition somebody else with that same skill set in to cover for them during their period of convalescence. And it's going to be important for us to maximize our substitute pool if there's a time beyond learning pods where we come back in person, either full-time or part-time. Today in the governor's call with us, he talked about their interest in providing either networks to build up substitute teaching corps to meet that need throughout the metro region, or to give us more resources. For some people, perhaps having additional compensation beyond what we traditionally pay may create an incentive for people to want to be substitutes, but it will be one of the very big challenges that we have, and another factor that bears upon whether it's prudent and the right place to go in terms of doing in-person learning. Because if we don't have staff to supervise it and to provide quality instruction, we'll do better to stay remote.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just realized that you all have done an excellent job in addressing questions, and mine have also been addressed. So I'll just say a big thank you for how thoughtful and thorough you've been with this presentation and your planning for keeping our students and our teachers and our communities safe this fall and beyond.
Thank you so much.
Councilmember Brown.
Did you like that?
I saw you.
Chris, I'm just curious. Have you had teachers that have resigned or have chosen not to come back rather than be involved in a public face-to-face teaching?
So over the last week or two, we've started to see some greater numbers of retirements and resignations. I don't have a quantity for you as we sit here. I know from HR that we're starting to see that happen. Up until the last 2 weeks, our retirements and separations of teachers were actually lower than what we've seen historically. So in most years, we have about 180 teachers separate or retire. As of mid-July, we're at 161, so it was a little bit lower, but we're starting to see as we get closer, some people who feel like, just given all these circumstances, either because they're worried about their health and they feel like even with accommodations, it's just too great a risk, or for some, I think frankly, we have some staff members who don't enjoy remote learning and remote instruction, and if that's the way they foresee things likely to be for an extended period, for some, they're going to say, now's the right time to leave. We'll closely watch that, but we are starting to see some of that develop.
Thank you.
So, Chris, I actually have no questions, but the reason is because both your district staff and your school board have done such a great job of communicating. I work in a different district, and so there's a lot of back and forth because we're not doing things the same. But one thing that Adams 12 does far better is communication. You have surpassed that all through the COVID piece, but it's the communication with humanity that really stands out. And I've had residents say that to me. I believe that as an Adams 12 parent and an Adams 12 resident, but it's something to be really proud of, and it's a celebration. So thank you for that. It is clear the decisions were made very thoughtfully, and I just appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Council. When I look around this little Brady Bunch configuration, I just know that this group, between either your professional experience or your parenting experience or the work that you do in the community, is one of the very most invested in public education in our country, not just our state, but in the country. And we appreciate that support. You're great partners with us, and we look forward to going next steps down this challenging time together. So thanks again.
So thank you, Pat, for being here. Did you want to add anything, or I don't want to leave you out?
Nope, I was just here for moral support. I will say one thing though, just about the dates. So I think that there's a few of those dates there that are subject to maybe slide a little bit, just because it is continually a moving target. But I think if we've learned one thing in COVID, it's to be flexible, right? So we'll be flexible, and thank you all for your support and the great partnership. We certainly appreciate it.
Well, thank you all for taking the time to be with us. I know our council appreciates it, but also our residents really appreciate you taking the time. So thank you. Have a great night.
Appreciate you all. Take care.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, we are moving into public invited to be heard. This is an opportunity for public comment on any item not set for public hearing. Statements are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Statements must be related to city business and limited to matters of community interest. Joanna, do we have anyone signed up tonight?
I have not received any emails or text messages, but there is one caller on the line. So I will unmute that phone number just in case they would like to provide public comments. So let me unmute that number. And if they would like to speak up, they can do so now.
Okay, well, I think we will move ahead. So we are going to move into communications. So let's go backwards again. So we'll start with Ward 4, Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2 very brief updates from me this evening. One is that Colorado Communities for Climate Action, we had a board meeting last Friday. And one thing that was abundantly apparent is that there is a lot going on at the state regulatory agencies through rulemaking. And so I just wanted to let council know that I will be sharing a master document of all of those different proceedings that are happening at the Public Utilities Commission, the Air Quality Control Commission, as well as the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, so that if there's something that you're interested in, please let me know so that I can definitely help try and insert you into any conversations or opportunities to provide testimony. And then secondly, I am looking forward to our first homelessness task force meeting tomorrow evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Escobar.
Here I am. I have nothing. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I would like to say just a couple of words about the diversity training that we participated in last weekend. It was very informative, lots of information. So I'm still processing it and doing some research and following up on some of those things. So I'm looking forward to our second session. And then I am reporting out on the legislative committee this time. So I'll just say that this this part of the summer, I guess, the state legislature has been pretty quiet. The Joint Budget Committee actually meets tomorrow, and they have got quite a job ahead of them. The state, of course, is really short on funds right now, and they are going to be asked for some money to help fight the wildfires that are starting to spring up around our state now, already approaching exceeding that budget and needing money for that. So that's going to be a challenge. And just to reiterate for people who maybe are, well, I think we're all still a little confused on it, but the president's executive orders about extending unemployment benefits do require the states to match some of those funds. And as I said, our state is pretty darn broke. And so there's uncertainty as to how we are going to be able to participate that or receive those funds. So that's something that we'll have to watch and see what happens with that. Even though we do have a few openings or elections for our state Senate and representatives, it doesn't look like there's going to be much change in the legislature in terms of the makeup. It'll probably remain primarily Democratic. So that was just something that was noted. And here in Northglenn, we're going to start working on our legislative brochure for what we want to be looking at and working towards for next year. Or the next legislative session, I guess I should say. And we will probably not have the annual dinner with our two legislators for obvious reasons. But there is plans. We're going to invite both Faith Winter and Kyle Mullica to come to a study session for our city council to meet with us and discuss legislative issues that will impact Northglenn. And we're going to try for December 7th. But there will be more information coming out about that. And then we also discussed that we will probably not plan a day for our city council to spend the day at the Capitol. But really, in December, we'll come back and revisit all these uncertainties and see if anything can actually be planned out or if we're just going to have to out and out cancel those two events. And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mullica?
Yes. Hi. So I just have a couple updates. First off, today was the first meeting of the RTD Accountability Committee. A lot of it was just introductions, go get them type stuff. And then we elected chairs, co-chairs, Elise Jones from Boulder, Commissioner from Boulder County, and then Crystal Morrow from Aurora, the city of Aurora. She's a council member over there. So we have co-chairs that are going to be leading this effort. Really great group, diverse backgrounds. I'm really looking forward to working with everybody and advocating for our northern region. So looking forward to that. I did spend some time last week working with some Northglenn High School kids, even though it's pre-summer. preschool year, they were doing a STEM project surrounding COVID and what are ways that they could prevent the transmission of COVID or use 3D technology or other technologies they have to make areas safer, like libraries and kids, like recreation activity centers, and of course their school and hospitals. So I got to hear about some of their great ideas, and it's always fun to hang out with them. And they're always really smart kids. So I'm excited about our opportunity to work with them. And then finally, I just want to announce, and Catherine, I'm actually surprised you missed this one. So we're having an online Ward 3 meeting. So September 2nd. We're looking forward to that. We wanted to let, I think it was Ward 2 or Ward 1 who did the first one. And so we're like, we let you guys test the waters, and we decided to jump in. So looking forward to talking to our Ward 1 folks in September. That's all I got.
Nice, thank you. Councilmember Downing.
Thank you. I was expecting Becky, so. Just a couple things. I did participate in the grab and go last Tuesday, and it went very well. And all the residents are so appreciative of everything we're doing. And they miss the music over at Rains Park, the concerts, and said, thank you so much for at least bringing some of the smaller bands into some of the local parks. So it went very well, and looking forward to the rest of them. The other thing we did last week is we took a tour of the new theater. It still needs a roof, but it's coming along really well. And I went with the Arts and Humanities Foundation, and they are just thrilled with the way it's all looking. So it's doing very well. And then lastly, I did attend a virtual conference for the National Alliance for Historic Preservation. It was a week-long conference, lots of detail, lots of good ideas, and especially since we're moving into a new arena with the DESA estates and some of the other things that we're going to be working on, I think it was really worthwhile attending it. So did that.
Nice, thank you. Councilmember Brown.
I don't want to talk now. I just want to give a shout out, first of all, to all the people who were nominated, and all of those that nominated are good neighbors. Sometimes, especially in these really hard times, we tend to get wrapped up in the negativity that may be out in the city with a very small group. But it is so nice to know that we have residents that just care so much about each other. It really symbolizes what Northglenn is all about. I'm glad that we're continuing the program, and I just want to thank everybody and congratulate those great neighbors. I have a question, I think, for either Meredith or Julie. I'm wondering, can you address our neighbors about where they could still go to fill out the Adams County 12 survey? Is that on their website?
I received mine in an email, so every parent should have received it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same here.
Okay, because I've gotten a couple texts during the call, and they don't have the email. So how can we help them get their word in?
I think it probably should be, if you go to the Adams 12 5-star website, it's probably in the homepage. They usually have like news and like updated things. Yeah, it's actually the first thing you go to their website. So just adams12.org. And there's a link off of there. The need and family intent form is right on the main page.
Thank you, Julie. I really do appreciate that. The other thing that I would like, when we're all done, if Heather could speak to the changes that are going to be affecting Claude Court and the neighbors out there. I really want them to be able to hear from you that we're working on this and that what we're doing to change things around, Heather.
I think she wants you to do that now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant after.
Either way.
Brown. Kent, I don't know if you're listening. Kent, can you hear this conversation? Kent Kisselman?
Yes.
Okay, can you jump on and help fill in gaps? So we recently striped Claude Court in accordance with the Connect Northglenn plan, which added striping to walking lane and then a bike lane. And that was done after we redid some of the paving on the northern section of Claude Court. When we went ahead and put the striping down, what we discovered is that there's a block of homes that face east on Claude Court, and they were impacted when we put the striping down in terms of there's on the west side of Claude Court, if you can picture this, it's more narrow. So there's certain stretches of that road where we're not able to do a parking lane plus a bike lane, and then the main roadway, and then the same on the other side. So we have a bike lane, but that impacts residents' ability to park. So Kent went out along with staff. I spoke with Kent and Brooke, and we reevaluated that particular impact and decided to go ahead and shift the bike lane, remove it essentially, but individuals will still be able to bike on Claude Court. Kent can talk about more of the specifics and the timeline with that. So Kent, can you add in based on what I shared?
Yes, so the stretch is between 116th Drive and 116th Avenue, where it has, for most of the section, for the 18 blocks or so, it's parking on one side and bike lane on the other. And so that one stretch of block actually does have homes that face east, as Heather mentioned. So we're going to take that block in particular and make it a parking on both sides and make it a shared lane or a sharo, like it is up at the north end when you're coming from Claude from 120th. So it'll be a little odd. It won't be exactly continuous, but those residents that do face east will have parking in front of their home. So every home that fronts Claude Court after we fix 116th Street to 116th Drive will have frontage parking in front of their home. And the timeline on that, we went out a few days ago. I guess it was last week, Thursday. I think Kyle put together a memo or a mailer and went individually to those 4 homes. And I didn't see Kyle today, so he either made contact with the resident or left the flyer and contact information with what we're going to be doing. So now we're working with Colby Striping, who did the striping on Melody and also on Claude, of how we're going to remove the existing striping and then restripe that block.
Can we get the no parking signs taken down?
No parking signs, yes. When the area is restriped to have that parking, then we'll remove the no parking signs in that area.
Okay, and the speed humps, they're coming back, right?
They should have began speed humps. I didn't get out there today, but I think they were supposed to be starting this week.
Okay, I'll be down there looking. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, fellow council people. I appreciate it. And I'm done.
Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Ashley and I are also having another virtual ward meeting, and that will be the day before, and I think that's September 1st. And so we're looking forward to that. We're going to, since Kent just had the floor, Kent's going to be one of our focal programmers, and he's going to speak a little bit about traffic issues in Ward 1 and how that looks. And so we're also going to have Commander Waltz with us and talking a little bit about policing and issues related to that. And other than that, that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Witkovich?
Nothing for me. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. I also have nothing tonight. So City Manager Geyer.
Thank you, Mayor Leidy. I've asked Amanda Peterson, our Director of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services, to provide council with an update on how we're moving forward with our preschool programming into the fall.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll give you a little update. So as you all know, we have been providing a version of day camp this summer, similar to what Superintendent Godowski spoke of earlier. Those programs are modified from what we would normally have as a fun summer camp program. But our goal was to help meet a need for parents who needed to be able to go to work and leave their children in a safe environment. And the focus this summer really was on trying to provide an enriching experience while keeping group size small and cohorts consistent and activities taking place in their classrooms or right outside. You may have noticed that the parking lot to the rec center was half blocked off this summer. And that was so that kids could go out and ride their bikes in the parking lot without being across the street at the park where there were lots of other families recreating. So staff definitely made things work and were creative and are continuing to do so. We are trying to respond to the needs of parents and families that have resulted from the delay in the start of school. So although camp was initially slated to end on August 7th, we have extended camp all the way through Wednesday, August 26th. We did have to reduce our capacity from 40 spots to 30 because some of our own staff are headed back to school and or transitioning into other programs that have restarted. So those 30 spots were first offered to our Northglenn residents who have already registered for camp this summer, and then to our non-resident registrants who had already been a part of camp this summer through a randomized lottery. As of late Thursday, those 30 slots were completely full. All of our Northglenn resident registrants were able to get a slot for the additional 2-week period, give or take. So staff have also met with a representative from Adams 12 to better understand how we might be able to identify and fill the gap that may exist as our students head into at least a month of remote learning, whether that be supporting their pods or supporting those students who are learning at home, supporting before and after school needs. We don't know exactly what that is. This school district doesn't know exactly what that is. Everybody's trying to figure out something brand new to all of us still. So we are awaiting a response back from the district to try to identify what that gap might be and how we might help fill that, whether that be to provide additional classroom space or additional staff or be able to provide an extended day program based on our experience from this summer running our camp program. Our intention with preschool is that we won't offer preschool in person until such time that school is offered back in person. We would utilize those same resources, like I said, to rather offer support for a remote learning environment, particularly since our preschool program is an enrichment program for several hours a day and doesn't serve a full childcare need or a full day. And involves rotating kids through the same classroom, which is in opposition to our kind of cohort philosophy that we've taken on this summer that has been a requirement of our childcare license. So there's still ways to do that, but as you heard during the Adams 12 presentation earlier, some of those regulations are continually changing and adapting as we learn more. We have not had any cases or any need for any quarantines this summer, which is wonderful. We have a much, much smaller group size than the district is working with, either through base during the summer months or as they head back into pods and then potentially in-person learning. So we have a smaller group size that we're able to handle. We've done that with a very high child to staff ratio, maintaining the pods and their assigned staff members. So we had as little overlap as possible between groups of children with either other children or with staff outside of those that had been assigned to them. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We will continue to adapt. We will continue to try to fill what needs exist in the community to the best that we can. And hopefully we will hear back from our district contacts this week with some ideas they may have as to how we might be able to assist. That is all I have this evening. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to respond to those.
I do see a question from Councilmember Brown.
Not a question. Amanda, I went for a walk Friday night. I've been bothering Julie so much, and she's been a wonderful resource, by the way, for my COVID questions coming from California. But I went for a walk. She's great, I'm telling you. But I went for a walk, and I had several residents reach out to me and tell me what a fantastic program you're running. So grateful for the extra 2 weeks of camp and how wonderful the staff is. And I think it's important to share that with you so that the staff, can be recognized. Everyone that I spoke to who brought it up, it was a little posse, just so thrilled to death with Northglenn and the way we support our citizens and all of that. The personal phone calls they got from Kelly. It was great. Thank you so much for everything that you guys did over the summer with the summer camps and extending them the 2 extra weeks, because that really helped. Everybody last night or Saturday, whenever I did it, Friday, had an opinion on that, and it was all positive. Thumbs up, congratulations.
Definitely pass that along to staff. As you may know, most of our staff who worked this summer don't traditionally work in camp. So everyone adjusted, they jumped right in and really got the chance to hang out with the kids and try new things and keep them safe throughout the summer.
Thanks, Amanda. And Mayor, the only other thing I have to share with council tonight is the memorandum for Wednesday night study session on police citizen oversight for Models M is online and available. Thank you.
Joanna, do you have anything tonight?
I do have 2 quick items. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first is a quick update on the Citizens Affairs Board. They met last week. They received information from staff on homelessness, which was helpful. And then they also interviewed a resident for the Ward 3 membership position. So I want to thank all of the residents who have applied for the Citizens Affairs Board recently. I know some of that was based on council's discussions. Other might be word of mouth from council members. So we definitely appreciate you reaching out to residents and letting them know how they can volunteer with the city. And then the second item, little personal item here, I just want to give a shout out to my father-in-law who was recognized as part of the Good Neighbor Awards. Bernard Small, he was nominated by his next door neighbor, Miss Gardells, who is a longtime Northglenn resident. And I was very happy to see that he had his mask on during the pandemic, but also a little sad that everyone couldn't see his smile because he really is one of the friendliest people that I know. And it's not just him, all along their block, all of their residents are so good at looking out for one another. So I think that's a great program. Want to congratulate all of the other good neighbors who are recognized. It is so fun as a staff member. I'll just speak for myself, but it's so fun for me as a staff member to see all of the pictures of the residents. So you kind of get a feel of who's living in Northglenn, and when we're out and about, we might recognize them. So also want to thank council for recognizing those residents too and for putting that on the agenda. That was great. That's all.
Nice. That's awesome, Joanna. Thanks for sharing. Corey, anything tonight?
I think you'll be hearing from me plenty later, so nothing now.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, I think we're moving into our financial update. Let me get the presentation. Jason Loveland is here, our Director of Finance. Welcome.
Hello.
Oh, we need a little more volume out of you.
We do?
Just a little bit. Okay. You're very quiet.
I'm here in a cave, and so I feel like I'm yelling at myself. So thanks, Mayor and City Council. This is the quarterly update for through June 30th. So we'll touch on kind of our typical highlights each quarter. The first, we'll touch on sales and use tax. So this is information that I shared at our last update, as far as sales and tax being down 10.8% through the year. So this is collections through May. Just last week, we put our numbers together for our collections through June. June was a little bit better than the past several months. It was only down 5.8%. So for the year, that had an impact on our sales and use tax being down 9.8% as of today. So this chart is a little bit behind as we're reporting June numbers here. And you can see on that bottom line kind of where we are down below 2016 numbers. I think we have talked about that a little bit in the past. So specifically through June, the food tax and marijuana taxes continued to lead the charge. Food tax was up over 17%, and then the marijuana tax was up over 8%. On the other side of things, auto use tax was down almost 22%, and then sales tax, pulling away the food tax and marijuana tax and auto use tax, was down a little over 8% for the year. So the last several months that I have mentioned, we were not looking so good. Let me pull that up. So March, if you recall, we were down 14%, April 25%, May down 13%, and then the most current data, we're down 6% when you compare June 2020 to 2019. So I'm going to take that as a positive for us on our tax revenue, that we're down less than we were the previous few months, but still all in all, tough financial times. Councilmember Goff mentioned, the state looking for its budget and making hard decisions with their general fund. I think we've heard, a $3 billion shortfall. Ours is about a $3 million shortfall. So same as a percentage-wise when you consider billions to millions, but as a percentage, it's somewhere between 10 and 12% that we're expecting to be down for sure through this year. So to the next slide, the general fund revenues and expenditures. You'll notice that top line, the collection and spending rate. So the collection rate is at 37%. That's down 7% to kind of our historical numbers. So again, just another indicator here of where we're falling short. Total revenues of 11.2 million, and then expenditures of 12.1. Our expenditures are really ended up kind of falling in line. Some of that is misleading because we have some increased CARES Act spending that we wouldn't normally have predicted and planned for within that number. We are seeing savings as we had planned several months ago as far as tightening our belt with hiring freeze, seasonals not being hired, and then training and travel restrictions, among others. The next slide, Conservation Trust Fund. You'll see revenues of $193,000. Those are in line with kind of what we typically see. You'll see expenditures at $27 for the year. So the Greenway Trail project is getting underway, and we have not been billed for that at this time. And then there was the other project was Sensory Park Playground, and that project's on hold for now. And those were the two major expenditures of the $420,000 budget. And then in the Capital Projects Fund, that revenue of $11 million, most of that is made up of sales and use tax. So we're seeing obviously some decline in this fund as well. On the other hand, the special marijuana tax is recorded in this capital projects fund, and that's up 8%. So it's kind of offsetting some of that decline in sales and use tax. Expenditures, 7.7 million on project costs. 7.6 million of that is the recreation center project. We have another $3 million budgeted for residential street program work, which is just not captured through June in the billings that those folks have done. The other financing sources and uses, that $1,035,000. So that's made up of the interest expense for the two COP deals that we have, the 2017 Justice Center and then the 2019 Recreation Center. So that's what those expenditures are. And then in the water fund, let's see, again, this taxes line item, a majority of the revenue there is the food for home consumption tax, which I mentioned is up 17%. So again, offsetting some of the overall reduction that we're seeing. As far as user usage, consumption is actually up 9% on the year. I think it's been a little bit dry, and I think I'll speak from personal experience, having people home more has actually added to usage at my household. So I'm going to spread that assumption out across the city to others as well. That usage is up due to people being home. On the expenditure side of things, you see $4.4 million, again, spending within our utility, our enterprise funds are in line with what we had budgeted. And then in the wastewater fund, user charges and fees, those are up just over about 6% on the year. Falls in line with the rate increase that was implemented at the start of the year. And then again, expenditures within this fund total $1.9 million and are in line with our plans for this fund. And then the stormwater fund, charges are down about 5%. That's really a timing issue, just with billing and the different cycles. And total expenditures of just under $43,000 for really just the administration of the stormwater program, and no capital outlay expenditures at this point. And then the last one on sanitation. Sanitation revenues are down 2% on the year. The charges for services are actually flat, which we would expect. Nothing stands out in this fund. And again, the capital outlay, we'll be expecting to take ownership, hopefully soon, of trash vehicles that we had ordered at the start of the year. But operationally, that fund has kept moving as we planned, which is a good thing. It's an excellent service that's provided. So, and then just wrapping up, again, general fund revenues down over 6% on the year. Sales and use tax down, around that 10% number. Seen some declines in some intergovernmental revenues with transportation tax and highway user tax that we would expect. And again, it's a month-to-month scenario on how we are forecasting the rest of 2020 and then into 2021. But we're doing a great job, maintaining our expenditures within our means and making those reductions that we had talked about earlier in the pandemic. And with that, I can answer any questions about the presentation. All right.
Thank you, Catherine, for the universal sign. Councilmember Brown.
My only question is, we're down 6.2% on the general fund. What is that? What is our general fund at now? About 69%?
I would say that it's 80% as we forecast into throughout the end of the year.
How about right now? Do we know?
It's about 80. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but we budgeted for that. So every time you report, you've already accounted for the loss this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's just such a snapshot in time number, that fund balance reserve. So we had budgeted to spend about $3 million of reserve as part of the budget. So we had planned to take it from about 90 to 80, and we're lined up to do just that towards the end of the year.
So being 6% down from 80 would put us down to 84%, or I'm sorry, 76%. How can we be down but still the same as we were last month? Because last month I remember us saying 80% was our general fund reserve.
Yeah, so we're planning to collect less than we had budgeted, but we've also on the back end reduced expenditures through different savings strategies. And so we're really trying to maintain that 80% number, I guess, of what we had decided for in our budget. We haven't gone back and reduced our revenue budget. We haven't reduced our expenditure budget, but we know that both of those things are coming as far as tightening our belts and then the lost revenue.
Heather,
so we're still expecting to be at 80%.
Expecting to be at 80% at the end of the year.
Correct.
Heather, can you possibly get us a list of the cost-saving measures that we've done that will make up for the variances that we're experiencing in the general fund?
Sure. I mean, we provided that several weeks ago, and I believe that the last time we provided that information, it was in July. And it's an aggregate form because that's the easiest way to do it in terms of professional services, supplies, etc. But we can certainly provide council with an update. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason. I mean, when we go to present budget 2021 to council, we'll be providing an update of where we're at overall and what the projected ending fund balance for this year is going to look like. There are some revenues that we may receive this year. It's all timing with the Carl's Farm development, which may actually bump that up a little bit. It's a matter of we don't count it until we get it, but we're anticipating some additional revenue there. But we can share more about that at budget time. Unless you want it sooner, we can provide.
No, you know what? I'll just go back, refresh my memory, and go that route. I'm fine. If everybody else is fine, I'm fine. I don't want you to double work.
Okay. Well, I'll send you the meeting link. So it's just a click away.
Well, as Catherine will tell you, I had a hard time even remembering when July came. So, okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Jason? No? Okay. Well, thank you for being here.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay. Moving into the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Joanna, will you call the vote, please?
Mayor Leidy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford?
Yes.
Councilmember Witkovich?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Downing,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Goff,
Yes.
Councilmember Duran Mullica,
Yes.
Councilmember Escabel.
Okay. He must have stepped away.
I'll close that vote without Councilmember Escabel's vote, and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, moving into ordinances on first reading, CB 1950. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A bill for an ordinance adopting a new Article 13 of Chapter 2 of the Northglenn Municipal Code, creating the Diversity, Inclusivity, and Social Equity Board.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, so we have Rupa Venkatesh, our assistant to the city manager, is here to provide a summary.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for having me today. So as Joanna had mentioned, this is officially creating our Diversity, Inclusivity, and Social Equity Board, the first step. So this is very exciting. And thank you to Corey and his legal team for incorporating all of Council's feedback from July 27th to this ordinance. In addition, legal did provide the language around the voluntary disclosure part of the application. I do want to point out and say a thank you to John Eisel with our communications team that the application that's in your packet is not the final one. He did point out some typos, so we have since corrected that. And that final version will be on our website tomorrow because the application opens tomorrow. So on our website, there'll be the application in the form stack format as well as the PDFs. And the information has been put in our August connection already. And I'm really pleased to say that I've actually had a few residents reach out to contact me to get more information about that. And Communications also put together the postcards that council had suggested we mail out to all of our residents. So those postcards will be mailed out Wednesday for residents to, for those to hit mailboxes no later than August 19th. And Jessica Holtz, our new community resource navigator, and myself will be at some of the August 18th food truck events for her to introduce herself and provide any resources as it relates to COVID-19. And also I'll be able to talk to residents about this new diversity board, and we'll have 100 extra postcards as well if any council members want those postcards to disseminate amongst your wards. So with that, I will turn it back over to the mayor for any questions from council.
Any questions for Rupa? Okay, seeing none. Joanna, will you call the vote, please?
Mayor Leidy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford?
Yes.
Councilmember Witkovich?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Downing?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Goff?
Yes.
Councilmember Duran Mullica?
Yes.
Councilmember Escabel?
Yes.
I will close that vote, and CB 1950 on first reading passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving into resolutions, CR 115. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A resolution approving a professional services agreement between the City of Northglenn and Hazen and Sawyer for engineering design services for the water treatment plant solid sampling improvements project.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have Kent Kisselman, our Director of Public Works, here to provide a summary. Hi, Kent.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me. So this is a resolution to approve a contract for engineering design services for the water treatment plant solids handling project. We issued the RFP and we did shortlisted some consultants, and Hazen and Sawyer was the most qualified firm that best fit this project for our needs. This is going to be broken into 2 phases. The first phase is going to be where they study the available processes and the dewatering technologies to determine what the best way is to get rid of the backwash ponds and utilize the savings for the waste of water that we have. They'll be providing an economic analysis and savings for these improvements. And then when they get that all done, then we'll come back and do an amendment for them to get the design services for the contract. In short, this project, we have 2 backwash ponds at the water treatment plant, and the wastewater from the backwash ponds, it goes to it becomes a sludge, and it gets pumped from our water treatment plant up to our wastewater plant. And the process is pretty wasteful, and we really do waste a lot of water. So this is a project that will provide a true solids handling system. And we're very fortunate that we actually had one of the vendors out today. So I'm going to do the best way to show you the process is I took a couple of videos today. So you'll see the sludge in this trough, and that's the wasted water from our water treatment plant that would normally be sent to our wastewater treatment plant and through our system, which is also hard on our system. And then the second video will be this selected press, which I'll just kind of let it play, but it'll go through a series of pipes. The sludge, that same brown fluid will go into a series of pipes. We'll add some polymer. It'll go into a press, and you'll actually see the water being pressed out, and it'll make a grit that separates the water. And we're going to be able to capture 80% of this water. And then the grit can be hauled to the landfill directly from the water treatment plant, no longer going into our system. So to kind of put that in a dollar value, we're estimating, and again, that's what Hazen Sawyer is going to provide for us, but Sophie, our water resource analyst, put some preliminary numbers together. So we're estimating that we can save 160 acre feet of water, and that would be water that we would have to purchase. So at the current cost of $40,000 an acre foot, that's about $6.4 million that we'll be able to recoup and recover from this waste of water project. So with that, I'm going to play the video, and then after that, I'll be able to answer any questions. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that was the fluid that is our wasted water, and then here's the process.
That's gross. Okay, am I back? So as you can see, that water
was just in that matter of moments was compressed into that brick of dirt, which is the grit, and all that water that was there is now saved or reclaimed. So this may be one of the vendors that we use, but again, that's what Hayes and Sawyer will be determining. This is just one vendor with their kind of spin on how that process works, but pretty exciting that we were able to have that vendor out there today so I could actually just show you what we're looking at. Because a lot of times when we have these capital projects like this, you don't really have an idea of what the actual thing does. So that was pretty good. So attached to this memorandum is Council Resolution 115, a resolution that, if approved, would authorize the mayor to execute an agreement between the City of Northglenn and Hazen and Sawyer for engineering design services for the water treatment solids handling improvements project in an amount not to exceed $72,620. And I'll answer any questions.
Any questions for Kent? No. Thank you. Joanna, will you call the vote, please?
Mayor Leidy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford?
Yes.
Councilmember Witkovich?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Downing?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Goff?
Yes.
Councilmember Duran Mollica?
Yes.
Councilmember Escobar?
Yes.
I'll close that vote, and CR 115 passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kent. All right. Moving into discussion items. The first one is an overview of Senate Bill 20-2017. So our city attorney is here to talk to us about this. Hi, Corey.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. On June 19th, which was the day that the governor signed Senate Bill 217, which is known as the Law Enforcement Integrity Bill, we provided you roughly a 13-page memorandum that I think was included in your confidential materials for tonight's meeting. What I'm going to try to do is summarize as best I can what I think are sort of the big issues, the big points. But at the same time, this is a broad piece of legislation. I'm not going to touch on every piece. And as you see in the 12.5 pages, there's different effective dates for different portions of the bill. But suffice it to say that most of the bill's requirements are going to be in effect by September 1st, 2020. Many were effective on June 19th, 2020. However, one of the primary components of the bill does have a significantly delayed effective date, and that relates to the body-worn cameras, which is not effective until 2023. With that in mind, again, I'm going to try to touch on some of the high points just to give council and those that might be listening some of the high points, at least from my perspective, and I know that the police department from a training perspective. So one of the biggest fundamental changes related to, frankly, how police officers do their work when they're in difficult situations relates to the use of force. And so the basics for when use of force can be used has changed. The old language prior to Senate Bill 217 said that to the extent that the officer reasonably believed it necessary to either effect an arrest, prevent the escape from custody of an arrested person, or defend himself of a third person from what the officer believed to be the imminent use of physical force. use of force was allowed. Now, there is a prerequisite that the officer has to determine that nonviolent means will be ineffective. So this is a fundamental shift, if you will, on when force can be utilized. In addition, there are explicit limits on the use of force. You can't use deadly physical force to apprehend a person who is suspected of only a minor or nonviolent offense, undefined. But I think police officers with their training and experience know generally what is a minor or nonviolent offense. And then the degree of force used must be consistent with the minimization of injury to others. Now, the other piece of the use of force limitations that has probably gotten a significant amount of attention is the outright prohibition on chokeholds. And so ultimately it is no pressure on a person that would limit breathing. So not just at the neck, throat, or windpipe, and also no carotid holds. Those are now prohibited. That is kind of a general overview with one other point, and that is that when the officer can, the officer is to identify himself or herself as an officer and give a clear verbal warning of his or her intent to use firearms or deadly physical force with sufficient time for the warning to be observed, unless to do so would unduly place officers at risk of injury or would create a risk of death or injury to other persons. So that is, in a very general sense, the new obligations related to use of force. There is also a duty to intervene. And this is a newly created duty to intervene when another officer is using more force than is permitted by law. So if an officer is violating what I just described, other officers have a duty to intervene. And again, this is an explicit duty to intervene that has criminal consequences for the failure to intervene. In addition, and again, something that I think has been focused on significantly in the media, and frankly is a significant liability issue for the city, is that now there is a sort of a companion claim under state law for a violation of someone's rights under the Colorado Constitution. So what we typically have prior to Senate Bill 217 was what's known as a Section 1983 claim against the city. And that was because there wasn't a state counterpart. So it was a federal law claim against the city for a deprivation of one's rights under the Constitution. Now there is a companion Colorado version for depriving someone under Colorado law, under color of law, of their rights. In addition, there are a whole host of things that I'm not going to get into because it's hyper technical as it relates to qualified immunity under state law and how that is going to apply. But I do want to talk about indemnification, because indemnification of a police officer is a significant component historically of what the statute provides for police officers. Certainly, I think it's been front page news what some communities have done to attempt to, at least the perception is, circumvent Senate Bill 217. But the indemnification obligation by an employer, such as the city of Northglenn is as follows now. An officer's employer shall indemnify its officers for any liability incurred by the officer and for any judgment or settlement entered, except if the city, as the officer's employer, determines the officer did not act upon a good faith and reasonable belief that the action was lawful, or the peace officer was convicted of a criminal violation for the conduct from which the claim arises. And so these are two new provisions of the law. Now, how does the city make this decision? And when I say the city, it is you as the city council ultimately that are going to be part of this decision making in determining if an officer is indemnified. Did the officer have a good faith and reasonable belief that his or her action was lawful? There is a great deal of case law on an officer and what it takes to be acting reasonably. And there's nothing in the new legislation that really changes this idea that an officer's conduct will be evaluated under what's known as the reasonable person or reasonable police officer standard. That does not change. And so ultimately the city is going to be looking at that when it determines when an officer acting as a police officer for the city should be indemnified. In other words, the city should pay a judgment arising out of that officer's conduct. The other, I guess, significant component of the bill I want to talk about is the reporting requirements. Colorado has had reporting requirements in the law for many, many years. There was a reporting requirement added to Colorado law many years ago to address what was then known as racial profiling. And it was done to basically put obligations on police officers to give their information so that their business card, and it was done at the time to address racial profiling. That contact requirement has been expanded greatly and now includes a reporting requirement, a record keeping requirement, so that not only is are the contacts, the people that receive the contact or the recipient of a contact with a police officer, not only do they get the business card of the police officer, but the police department is required to keep records of those contacts so that the city has record keeping as to the nature of the contacts. One big requirement that the city is dealing with right now, because by September 1st, 2020, all law enforcement agencies are required to train officers on the new use of force standards, including the duty to intervene. And the failure to complete that training can result in the revocation of an officer's post-certification. So obviously significant consequences. The other thing related to the contacts, to the business cards of the officer, is those business cards now must contain information on how to file a complaint related to the contact. I will tell you that in Northglenn and frankly statewide, there are still a great deal of questions about what this looks like in practice. A contact is defined generally to be a contact where someone is evaluating whether someone has committed a crime. I think the harm that this bill is intended to address is that it must be some sort of legitimate belief that a crime is being committed or suspicious activity. And the United States Supreme Court has a history of talking about what is what the rules are, what is reasonable suspicion. And I think this legislation, in many respects, was trying to address where officers are responding to complaints, whether anonymous or otherwise, that frankly aren't criminal conduct. You've seen the bird watcher in Central Park that got a lot of press. Cases in Colorado, frankly, that have gotten a lot of press where officers are responding to complaints that aren't criminal activity. And so this is intended to make, I think, train police officers to develop their own reasonable suspicion, not rely on someone reporting what they might refer to as suspicious activity, which frankly isn't criminal at all. And so as part of what the city is doing in terms of training, that is ultimately a very significant issue is officers being able to, if I get a call that says there's a suspicious person walking in my neighborhood, what makes it suspicious? It's got to be more than just someone you don't know or that looks different from you walking in your neighborhood. Compare that to, maybe a Target store or one of the stores in Northglenn, an entire shopping area being closed, lights darken, and someone checking the door on a business, trying to see if doors are open. There's a big difference between someone doing that, maybe at 3 a.m. when businesses are closed, and someone simply walking down the street. And so trying to articulate what those differences are and having our police officers well trained to know that they have to identify their own suspicion and not rely on just getting things called in. And then certainly there is the issue of body-worn cameras. And body-worn cameras are going to be in effect statewide by 2023. I understand that I think Heather will be talking to you and the chief will be talking to you about a timeline for the city that is, I think, more aggressive than that. But ultimately, statewide, there will be requirements for not only the cameras themselves, but record keeping of the digital data that's generated, making that information available to the public, but with a lot of protections also to make sure victims are protected and that district attorneys can still prosecute their cases and win, and that the disclosure of all the data doesn't impact that. That's a very quick overview of a lot of data. We could spend hours talking about Senate Bill 217, what prompted it and what its result will, but I'm happy to answer any questions either in this during the meeting, or by all means, if you have questions that come up from the memo, I'm happy to respond to them at any point.
Thank you. So I have Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. When this first came out, I did look it over and, legal language and all that. Don't take it personally. But So one of the questions I wrote in the margin, I think it's, if I'm even reading this, even that part was confusing. On section 5, which is the use of force, when they were talking about they're prohibited from using a chokehold, but I couldn't figure out when that goes into effect. I know different things go in effect at different years or different times, but that one, I was like trying to go to the beginning of that section and the end of that section, and I couldn't figure it out.
Okay, so the exception, the ban on chokeholds and when deadly force may be used was effective June 19th of 2020. The definitions on when the application of the use of force can be used. In other words, when nonviolent means cannot be used, that goes into effect September 1st.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
So Mayor Pro Tem, did you change your mind? I saw your hand.
Corey addressed my questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Great. Councilmember Brown?
Heather, are we prepared staffing wise for all this extra record keeping, or do we need to start looking at our staffing needs to meet the new requirements?
That's a great question, Councilmember Brown, and Commander Waltz is on the line. So Commander, feel free to jump in after I share a couple different thoughts in response to your question. Work is already underway in development of an implementation plan, and part of that plan will require the addition of at least one FTE, one new FTE for 2020. We're looking at a multi-year implementation plan, but with the majority of implementation taking place in 2020. So that gives us time to really work with the system and get the kinks worked out, so to speak, with technology, because it's going to be significant work. We have the physical space, as Chief has talked about in the past. We have the physical space to accommodate the implementation, but we will need to hire a staff person, and we'll have to evaluate that ongoing maintenance need and determine whether or not we'll need an additional staff person. Commander Waltz has done considerable outreach to neighboring communities and research, and so she has a good sense on how other communities are responding that have used body-worn cameras. And unfortunately for our benefit, the technology has advanced. And so I'll stop there, and Commander Waltz, if you can talk a little bit more about just overall implementation. And I would say what I'm striving for is to present council with more information at the budget work session scheduled for September 21st. And then we'll have any additional discussion that we need to have.
Fair.
Thank you. So I'll jump in now. Our records management system, we've been working hard to make sure that it can fulfill all the requirements that have been necessary reference to the law. So we've been working on that and making sure that the reporting requirements are there. And with that, I don't know that that will have staffing implications right now. It might at some point, but at this point, that part we're doing really well with. The body-worn camera system, as the city manager mentioned, is that we are going to have to look at some additional staffing for that to maintain all the storage, redaction, release of that video based on the law and the requirements there. So the staffing's been looked at. We're trying to determine when that's going to come into place and how, when we implement everything, whether that's going to be a phased-in approach or a direct approach right away. So at the moment, we're good. When the body cameras come in, will be the change in the program.
Okay, Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This is a comment not for Corey, but for Heather, more of a question. It seems like to me this is going to be a pretty extensive financial expenditure to fulfill the intents and purposes of the new law. And when we start talking about budget and budgeting process and stuff, could we have a one-pager, so to speak, in terms of what we need to do fiscally to adhere to the proponents of or the itemization parts of this law, so we can put its intent into practice? And I just think that's something we need to consider. This was a big step in so many ways, and it was also an unfunded mandate. And so as we look at this, we're going to have to take a look at our budget to implement this as desired by the legislature.
Yes, Councilmember Peterson, we will provide you with all the appropriate details so you understand the full impacts of the state law and what that looks like for 2020 budget, as well as ongoing in out years. So I'm anticipating 2021 budget is going to be the first major fiscal impact. And then what we'll do is we'll make projections for out years. Fortunately, there are different options that we have in terms of leasing equipment And so Commander Waltz, we've had an initial discussion about leasing versus purchasing technology. There's definite benefits to leasing the technology because of the evolution of the technology and associated upgrades. So we're going to put forth before council the recommendation that makes the most fiscal sense. This will, aside from implementation and opening of the new rec center, senior center theater next year, probably be an implementation of new staffing for that facility, probably be the biggest or, well, really second largest fiscal impact for 2021 budget that council's looking at. So as Jason mentioned, we're currently working with about a $3 million revenue decrease. So as I've mentioned, a council budget is going to be tight. However, I am trying to identify the best strategy on how to approach getting the body worn camera program up and running and implemented sooner than later. From my perspective, and Chief and Commander Waltz and I have talked about this on several occasions, I think this program is something that's needed in our community and that will benefit our community significantly. So comment about the unfunded mandate, completely hear you on that. I know we do have the money, whether it's use of general operating dollars or one-time reserve money. My recommendation is going to be that council move forward with standing up the program in 2021. But we can talk more about that on September 21st.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, thank you, Corey.
My pleasure.
All right. We are now ready for public invited to be heard. This is an opportunity for public comment. Do we have anyone on the call for this?
There is no one on the call, Mayor.
Okay, I was thinking that. All right. So we need to move into executive session. I need a motion, please. Nobody?
I move
Second.
to go into executive session.
Second.
Second, third, fourth, we got it. Okay, Joanna, will you call the vote, please?
Mayor Leidy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitkovich?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Downing?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Goff?
Yes.
Councilmember Duran Malika?
Yes.
Councilmember Escobar?
Yes.
I will close that vote and the motion to adjourn to executive session passes unanimously.
Thank you. So we are now adjourned to executive session.
Mayor, can we take a few